Subway safety under fire. A blistering new federal audit of safety procedures has turned up hundreds of close calls in the subway. Now transit officials are pushing back. A crackdown on crime. The NYPD flooding Central Park with officers in a counterstrike to an alarming surge in crime in New York City's crown jewel. And another attempt at peace. Amid simmering tensions in the Middle East, ceasefire talks begin again, with more than 100 hostages hanging in the balance.
From ABC 7 New York, this is Eyewitness News Extra Time.
And good evening on a Wednesday night. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I'm Josh Einiger. We begin with that alarming report about lapses in subway safety. The Federal Transit Administration just released a new audit of safety procedures at the MTA, and it isn't pretty. The audit uncovered 38 close calls involving transit workers just last year, and it also cited an astonishing 228 other close calls involving strap hangers. Eyewitness News reporter NJ Burkett has more on what triggered the audit and how the MTA is fighting back.
There are times when doors open on the wrong side, or in the subway tunnels, when trains roll past signals or get switched onto the wrong tracks. Federal regulators say it's putting riders and transit workers at risk. In an audit report obtained tonight by Eyewitness News, the Federal Transit Administration accuses the MTA of sacrificing safety underground. These incidents, the report concluded, reflect a combination of unsafe conditions and practices such that there is a substantial risk of death or personal injury that necessitates action. The report cites the death of Hilarion Joseph, who was struck by a D train in the Herald Square subway tunnel while cleaning the tracks last year. In June, another worker was struck and nearly killed in downtown Brooklyn. They're known as near-miss events. In 2023, there were 38 involving transit workers, which is up 58% over 2022 and up 65% over 2021. The report notes more than 200 other near-miss events last year, including events that potentially jeopardized transit riders. Regulators say the close calls keep happening because the MTA is doing little to prevent them. John Samuelson is the international president of the Transport Workers Union.
They absolutely need to invest in a day-to-day state of good repair at a system which leads to a safer environment for both workers and passengers. And they need to take worker safety seriously rather than worry about on-time train performance.
New York City Transit has been ordered to submit to federal monitoring, but the MTA is pushing back hard tonight and vowing to appeal. We strongly dispute FTA's view, said the interim transit president, that New York City Transit has somehow been negligent when it comes to addressing the safety of track workers, one of our most essential priorities. The agency has extensive safety protocols. The NTSB is still investigating both incidents cited in this report. And tonight, New York Congressman Jerry Nadler is criticizing the FTA for not coordinating with the safety board before issuing these directives. In Herald Square, NJ Burkett, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
The NYPD tonight is taking action to crack down on crime in Central Park. More than 36 additional officers will be flooding the park tonight. It follows a spike in muggings and assaults, 11 robberies since June 27th and 30 so far this year. It has New Yorkers and tourists on edge in what's always been known as Manhattan's crown jewel. But as Eyewitness News reporter Janice Yu found, the surge in crime is part of a larger issue.
Dozens of officers made their way into Central Park Wednesday afternoon, a show of force as the department continues to try to tackle the recent uptick in crime in the park.
We're not going to tolerate crimes in one of the most iconic locations in the world. And so behind me, you see the resources that we're going to deploy over the next days, weeks, whatever it takes to keep this place safe. Assistant
Chief Jason Savino says there have been 11 robberies in the park since June 27th, and he says 8 of them are likely connected.
You'll start to see, like I described, the wolf pack.
Savino says the suspects in these crimes are in large groups, what he calls wolf packs, like this mugging on August 1st. He says they take off with things like wallets, phones, and bags.
So you could imagine the feeling of that individual, predominantly tourists or soft targets, sitting on a bench and then ultimately being victimized by these wolf pack type robberies. It's tremendously concerning, and it's a new phenomenon not only to Central Park, but really to the area.
He says many of the suspects in these crimes live in city-run migrant shelters, and their average age is just 15. Police arrested an 11-year-old Tuesday night after he allegedly stole a phone from someone on the number 7 train. Assistant Chief Savino says the same kid was seen on video using credit cards stolen during a robbery in Central Park.
Although they're very young, very impressionable, they do have a big influence on this group. And that's something we haven't really readily seen. It's one of the first times I've ever seen it in my career.
Another tool the NYPD plans on using are drones, and we're told those will be deployed later this month. But for the time being, if you are in Central Park around the time of sunset to about 1 a.m., you're going to see more officers because they say that is when these crimes have been occurring. In Central Park, Jane Yu, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
And New York cops also swooped in on Randall's Island again this afternoon. They broke up the growing migrant encampment that had been set up just outside the city-run shelter there. The NYPD and the Parks Department police confiscated some items and sent migrants scattering. The Adams administration says encampments will not be tolerated. Earlier today, the NYPD Tow Division confiscated unregistered cars and alleged stolen mopeds that were also parked outside the shelter. Ernesto strengthened into a hurricane today as it dropped torrential rain on Puerto Rico and left half of all utility customers on the island without power. The storm's wide-reaching bands have been lashing Puerto Rico over the last several hours as the center of the storm passed about 175 miles to the northwest. Almost half a foot of rain has fallen so far across Puerto Rico. Meteorologists warn the storm surge could reach 3 feet, but life-threatening swells and riptides. Multiple flash flood warnings are also in effect throughout the day across the U.S. territory. The same goes for the British Virgin Islands. Ernesto will curve away from the Caribbean, though, into the Atlantic in the hours ahead, where it's expected to grow even stronger over the open sea. It could reach a Category 3 status before passing close to Bermuda this weekend. And as we continue with Eyewitness News Extra Time this Wednesday night, the road to the White House passing through Harlem tonight. The excitement ahead of a major Democratic campaign rally next. The race for the White House is rolling through Harlem tonight for a campaign rally celebrating Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz. Attending tonight, a pair of major local Democrats, Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams, along with many others. Meanwhile, Republican candidate Donald Trump held a rally this afternoon in the key state of North Carolina. Eyewitness News reporter Darla Miles is on the campaign trail in Harlem.
I am so hyped because the momentum in this movement is just totally unbelievable.
New Yorkers showing up early for the Harris-Walz ticket at the intersection of Broadway and West 135th Street in Harlem Wednesday afternoon. A rally to be held inside of this venue, led by the state's Democratic leaders.
I did think that she was coming, but I understand she's in Chicago, getting ready for the real big event. So we want her to know that we're following her here.
The Harris-Walz ticket taking a beat from the full-court campaign press today. Instead, President Biden hosting influencers at the White House.
You are the source of their news, and the more people want to go into your business than the other these days. What do you think when I retire? Where do you think I'm going?
Amid Biden's lighthearted appearance, the Israel conflict grows more tenuous every day. Hamas now saying it will not attend Thursday's peace talks, a big issue for some voters, eager to hear where Harris stands.
Having traveled with her overseas and gotten to see and hear the vice president's strength and skills and ability in diplomacy and national security policy, I very much look forward to a Harris-Walz administration and to the positive difference they could make in the world.
Voters also ready and waiting for the rollout of Harris's economic agenda Friday. Today, the Labor Department reporting inflation is now at its lowest that it's been in 3 years. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance in Michigan today saying he is not impressed.
That makes Kamala Harris directly responsible for this inflation disaster because she cast the tie-breaking vote on nearly $2 trillion in reckless spending.
And former President Donald Trump holding a rally in Asheville, North Carolina today that was billed as an economic address, but he went off script.
And let them have their convention, and who knows how that's going to turn out. Joe Biden is a very angry man, you know that, right? Because they took it away from him. They usurped it. They took it away from him.
And just outside and across the street from the Harris Waltz kickoff rally, a large group of protesters, those who are against the Israel-Hamas conflict and eager to see it end. This is the crowd that's going to greet Governor Kathy Hochul, Mayor Eric Adams, and some 36 Democrats set to attend the kickoff rally. Right now, these voices chanting a lot louder than those in favor of the Democratic ticket outside of this rally. In Harlem, Darla Miles, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And of course, stay with Eyewitness News and ABC News for continuing coverage of the race for the White House. You can also see updates and all the information right here on ABC 7 NY. And as we continue with Eyewitness News Extra Time, Darla started talking about it, the crisis in the Middle East. Ceasefire talks are set to resume tomorrow. Coming up next, we talk to the parents of an American hostage from Long Island who is still being held by Hamas. Welcome back to news on the crisis in the Middle East. The U.S. is scrambling tonight both to secure a Gaza ceasefire deal, but also to prevent a widespread regional war at a time of maximum tension between Israel and Iran. The fear that an escalation in the region might force the U.S. to get more involved. So the White House is deploying both deterrence and diplomacy. And then, of course, there's the potential for a ceasefire, which President Biden says could be out of the question if the situation escalates even further in the region. Biden is hoping Israel and Hamas accept the terms of a ceasefire deal during talks scheduled in Qatar tomorrow. And of course, the ceasefire would also involve the return of 115 hostages who are still in captivity in Gaza. 8 of them are Americans, and one of them is Omer Nutra. He's an American kid born in New York City and raised on Long Island, who took a gap year after high school to be with cousins in Israel, but decided to stay for a few more years. He signed up for his compulsory military service there, and on October 7th, he found himself manning a post near the Gaza border when the attack began. He and 3 team members responded to a kibbutz that had been overrun, but their tank was attacked. This is video the family and the families of the other members of his tank team all released just in the last 2 days. They were pulled out by Hamas militants. They were spirited into Gaza. That was 10 months ago. Orna and Ronan Nutra are Omer's parents, and they join us now from their home in Plainview on Long Island. Orna and Ronan, it's always bittersweet to see you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening.
So, there's a lot going on right now, obviously. I mean, there's always a lot going on in the Middle East, especially in the last 10 months. But with the talks that are supposed to resume tomorrow, we know Hamas has said it won't even attend. How optimistic are you that there will be a resolution?
Josh, we have to be optimistic. It's 313 days today, as we wear on our chest every day. We count the days. The Biden administration has put so much effort into bringing the parties together tomorrow. We really, really hope and we pray that the parties come to the table, that they do what's needed in order to reach this agreement conclusion, bring this to conclusion finally, and start getting the hostages out. They've been there for 330 days. Since the attack on October 7th, it's just crazy.
Could you talk a little bit about the last few weeks? There's been this agreement, one of many, by the way, that have been supposedly close to a resolution. And then, in the last couple of weeks, Israel, made a few very high-profile assassinations of, Hezbollah and Hamas leaders, one of them right in the middle of Tehran, angering Iran, and now things are that much more tense. And I guess I'm wondering, from your perspective, when you see what's going on with the potential for a hostage release deal and a ceasefire, and when you see things like that happen, how do you respond to that?
I want to remind all the viewers that we are dealing with a terrorist group. On October 7, this terrorist group, Hamas, attacked Israel in a ceasefire situation, killed 1,200 people, murdered 45 Americans, and at this point, we are trying to negotiate with them. Israel is trying to negotiate with them. United States, Qatar, and Egypt are all trying to bring Hamas and Israel to the table to try a conclusion. It's time. It's 313 days. It's so much time. We have no idea whether our son, what's his condition. We want to hope that he's alive. We are fighting the fight to get him back, put pressure not only on Hamas, but also on the Netanyahu administration in Israel to come to a deal, to understand that you have to negotiate with the devil. This is a terrorist group. It's terrible, but 220 people were taken. Right now, 115 are still left there, among them 8 Americans. And 5 are considered to be alive. It's time.
Josh, I think
go ahead. Sorry,
this is an opportunity. I'm sorry. We see this as an opportunity. There's been so much escalation. There's an opportunity to de-escalate the whole region. All parties have an interest in that. And we're really hoping that they seize this opportunity and not any other option.
You both spoke a couple of weeks ago at the Republican National Convention. I believe we have video of you speaking, and I know next week there's at least one other family, the Goldberg-Poland family, who are going to be attending the DNC, the Democratic National Convention. I know that must be a fraught decision to make with politics being so difficult domestically. Can you talk a little bit about how that plays into the family's needs right now for publicity and for making sure that your family members are remembered and are at the forefront of the priority list?
We are really non-political people, right? All the hostage families are completely acting in a bipartisan fashion. So yes, we went to the RNC, and yes, we are going to the DNC, and we're speaking to all the politicians. We're trying to affect everybody. We're speaking to both sides of the aisles, also to all people in the United States. And we're reminding them that this is a humanitarian crisis. And the only way to resolve it, as Orna said, is to get to a ceasefire, bring the hostages back, and bring some calm to the region that has been on fire for 10 months. So from our perspective, it's a completely non-political issue, and we're just there because we have the stage.
And it's important to take every stage, including this one. And I want to give you the opportunity. I gave a very, very brief and probably not nearly sufficient brief rundown of Omer. Tell me about him.
He's really just a great guy. You know, he's very social. He's a good kid. He's a kid that'll do the right thing. Like you said, he moved from Long Island. He was accepted to college already. He had a very comfortable life here. He moved from Long Island because he felt that, his family, his homeland needed his support and his protection. And that's why he did what he did, when he was taken on October 7th. That just shows, a lot about his character. He's always been a leader. He's very athletic. So he was the leader of his basketball, his volleyball, his soccer team in high school. He was a leader here in his youth group. But he's also really just a fun guy to be around, and his friends miss him dearly. Of course, we miss him dearly, and we just pray that he comes home soon.
We want to get him back. We want him to continue with his college plans. And as Orna said, American born, with a lot of sense of duty, and volunteering the way he did. And it's just proper to get him back, and we'll fight until we get him back.
And it's important. I know we spoke about this earlier. It is important to point out he wasn't a part of this war. He was manning a post on Israel territory during a time of peace, and he responded to a call for help from a kibbutz that was being overrun, and that's when he was overrun, along with his tank mates.
You're absolutely right. As a first responder, him and his team rushed to the border, trying to stop an infiltration of thousands of terrorists, but they were caught by surprise, and unfortunately he was taken with his team into Gaza. And now it's time to bring them back.
There are quite a few stories like this of Americans who either were, had a few years in Israel or actually made Aliyah, moved to Israel, who, 1 year are graduating from college in the suburbs of some United States city, and 2 years later are in the middle of this nightmare. And Orna and Rona Nutra, it's really, thank you for joining us tonight, and we think nothing of the best for Omer, and hope you get to see him soon.
Critical days ahead, and thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you both. Then as we continue tonight with Eyewitness News Extra Time, I'll give you a live look outside. Meteorologist Jeff Smith will be along with the look at the exclusive AccuWeather forecast. It was a gorgeous, not too humid afternoon. Here's meteorologist Jeff Smith with what's in store.
Yeah, really a fantastic day today for the majority of us, other than the people that experienced a thunder shower north of New York City. About 5% of the viewing area will have a repeat during the day tomorrow. Humidity staying pretty low out there. It's at 50% right now, 79 degrees, got up to 85 a little bit earlier this afternoon after a morning low of 67. You get a northeast wind coming in about 7 miles per hour. You notice some haze in the sky, and that's actually from Canadian wildfire smoke kind of infiltrating the area in all levels of the atmosphere. Temperatures overnight getting down into the upper 60s. Other than that thunder shower to the north, we're all high and dry. Here's that wildfire smoke as modeled by our computers here, mainly staying from New York City and points north and east, and it could turn quite hazy into especially Friday, eastern Long Island, up into parts of Connecticut and the mid-Hudson Valley. Again, this is mainly in the upper atmosphere, but some of it gets circulated all the way down to the surface, so it makes for less than ideal air quality at times during the next couple of days. 83 at Newark right now, 84 your number at JFK. You're only 68 at Newburgh. You've had a couple of thunder showers over portions of Orange County in particular. We zoom in there. We had one thunder shower that weekend as it moved off to the south. Another one here, though, over western Orange County, about to move into northern parts of Sussex County. Seems to be losing its lightning, but still a quick downpour up by High Point. And look at that one little surprise cell here that developed near, say, Carteret, New Jersey, moving into southwestern parts of Staten Island, heading over toward Perth, Amboy. So a couple of spots, very isolated, can get a shower, thunder shower into the early part of this evening. We're watching the tropics. You heard Josh mention Hurricane Ernesto earlier, 75-mile-per-hour sustained winds. It's pulling away from Puerto Rico, still causing some rain in that area, exacerbating the flooding conditions, but that'll pull away during the evening hours. And this will intensify over the very warm waters of the tropical Atlantic into a Category 3 storm south of Bermuda as we head into the day on Friday. By later Friday night into early Saturday, this can make a direct impact on Bermuda. I mean, Bermuda, that island is right almost smack dab in the center of this cone. It moves past there and may threaten Atlantic Canada, Newfoundland in particular, by the early part of next week. It's producing monstrous waves right near the center of the storm, and these propagate away from the center, and I mean just offshore. Maybe we're looking at 6 to 10 foot swells by especially the second half of the weekend, and that could mean some rough rip currents and rough surf, dangerous conditions at our local beaches during the weekend from offshore Hurricane Ernesto. So into this evening, maybe a scattered thunder shower off to the north of the city. We clear out overnight tonight, heading into the day tomorrow, very similar to what we had today. Middle 80s, fairly low humidity, and watch for a couple of thunder showers to develop, mainly to the north of New York City. Friday, you'll notice a little bit of an uptick in the humidity. Temperatures getting into the middle 80s, and it should be a quiet day out there. And then it's noticeably more humid over the weekend. That, along with a couple of disturbances moving in, will provide a chance of a shower or two Saturday, especially in the afternoon, and it could turn a lot more active by the time Sunday rolls around. Rip current risk low to moderate in the meantime for tomorrow, a foot or two for the waves. Water temperatures in the upper 60s to middle 70s. Moderate air quality. Pollen on the high side. It's ragweed season, and the UV index will be a 7, which is high. So other than an early evening thunder shower in spots, tonight just has patchy clouds. We're down to about 69. 86 for tomorrow. Hazy sun mixing with clouds, fairly low humidity continuing, maybe an afternoon shower north, partly cloudy tomorrow night, back down to 70. A touch more humid Friday, a lot more humid over the weekend. Saturday doesn't look too bad. Sunday, the stormier, wetter half of the weekend, and then we dry out by the middle part of next week. Josh, we'll send it back over to you.
I am old enough to remember the wildfire smoke of last summer. I am hoping it doesn't make it.
Yes, not a repeat so far.
All right. Jeff, thank you. And that wraps up this edition of Eyewitness News Extra Time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Josh Einiger. Join us tonight on Eyewitness News at 11 for the very latest, especially on that political rally up in Harlem. For now, live look at Central Park. Have a great night.